Hello. This recording is an introduction to the course LALS 175, Migration, Gender, and Health, that will be taught in the spring 2023 quarter here at UC Santa Cruz. I'm Professor Perez, and I'll be the instructor of this course. What I'm going to do in this recording is to go over the course syllabus, introduce some of the main themes, talk about the ins and outs of how the course is going to work, show a little bit how to use Canvas and other electronic resources, all of which are going to be the fundamental building blocks to learning and being successful in LALS 175 this quarter. So our class meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:20 to 4:55 in person in the Crown Classroom, 208. Again, I'm Professor Perez. My pronouns are he, him. The best way to contact me over the course of our quarter together is through the course Canvas page, specifically through the message inbox function of the course Canvas page. I teach multiple classes, and this is how I'm able to keep track of which class questions are coming from. Sometimes if through email, it ends up being a back and forth because I'll have to ask, oh, what class are you referencing? So this is how I'm able to keep track of questions that arise specific to each and which class. So again, best mode of contact is via the messages on Course Canvas. My office hours are going to be on Thursdays immediately after class, so from 5 to 7 p.m. here in my office where I am right now, Merrill Academic Building 36. This is just a few minutes away from the Crown Classroom, and so it's close by and not hard to find. Generally, our course is looking at the lived experiences that arise in the nexus of scholarship and stories about migration, gender, and health. And we look at specifically how experiences of health well-being, and health inequities are in fact shaped by gender and by experiences of migration. We take an approach that is fundamentally transnational. So we're looking at mobile communities, communities that extend beyond traditional understandings of what's local and what is global. And we take a person-centered framework, meaning that we're particularly interested in the experiences and stories of individuals themselves, of people as they experience their health and as it's cross-cut by migration and gender. This is going to enable us to, over the course of the quarter, really have a comprehensive examination of the diverse and unexpected and unanticipated social, political, and economic factors that ultimately influence how we experience health and well-being. We're covering a diverse range of Latinx geographies, from California's Central Valley and the experiences of agricultural laborers to the US-Mexico borderlands, and to hospitals and the cultures of medicine and health in Mexico. So those are going to be our themes, and that's the general idea of what this journey of LALS 175 is going to look like over the quarter. Our key texts are books in this class. We're really going to be diving deep into a small number of really great, compelling, moving texts. And they're texts that are based around the everyday experience, lived experiences and stories of people themselves. So it's going to be, it might feel a bit different than other classes that you've taken. but we're really trying to inhabit and live in and experience the worlds that books, which require a longer form of narrative and a longer sort of amount of time and investment that we have to put into in order to understand what's happening. And so that's going to be part of our journey, is going through some key texts. I'm going to go show them, talk a little bit about them now. All of the books are going to be available as ebooks through the UCSC library. So we have access, everyone will have access to electronic versions of the books. I encourage you to think about how you read best. What are the practices that work best for you in terms of reading and processing text and books and written material? And if it is downloading PDFs and reading them on a phone or on a screen, great, that works for you. But if that's not what, honestly, sincerely works best for you, I do encourage you to get copies of the books themselves. We're going to be talking about them in class. I want you to bring copies of the text to class. We're engaging with them ourselves and with each other. And so think about what's going to position you to be most engaged. And if that's using the electronic versions that are available from the library, great. If it's acquiring actual copies of this book, even of the books, even better. All of the books are available through the Baytree bookstore, and of course, used versions are available through electronic booksellers online. So a quick mention about the books that we're going to be looking at in the order that they appear on. I'll do it in the order that we'll be reading them, actually. So the first book that we're reading is Sarah Horton's They Leave Their Kidneys in the Fields, Illness, Injury, and Illegality Among U.S. Farm Workers. This is actually, we're going to spend the first 4 weeks of class on this really phenomenal, fascinating text that resonates with the our local region. It takes place in California, Central Valley. So this is our first one. This is the first one to get. Again, electronic versions are available through the library, although I would also encourage you to acquire a hard copy if that's what works best for you. We'll be spending a good chunk of time going through it, discussing it, and then our midterm will actually cover essentially this text itself. So it's in your interest to pay close attention and be committed to going through this particular text, because it will be the topic of the midterm. After the midterm, we'll be going through a couple of different texts. The first one is going to be a new, published this last year, short book called Undocumented Motherhood, Conversations on Love, Trauma, and Border Crossing by Elizabeth Farfan-Santos. Really, really great book. Looking forward to discussions on it. It's not long, it's significantly shorter than They Leave Their Kidneys in the Fields. The first time I read it in one sitting. It's a very compelling, engaging, moving book. We'll be spending about a week on it. We'll also be looking at Emily Mendenhall's Syndemic Suffering, Social Distress, Depression, and Diabetes Among Mexican Immigrant Women. We're not going to be reading all of this text, as opposed to our other books where we're really going to be reading all of it, but it's going to be a good point of juxtaposition and comparison to the Farfan-Santos text. Takes place in Chicago. And then we'll briefly take a detour through Rosalinda Fregoso's The Force of Witness, Contra Feminicide. Professor Fregoso is an emeritus professor from UC Santa Cruz and the LALS department. This is her new book. She'll be giving a talk on campus that we're going to be going to during class later in the quarter, and we're going to be reading a little bit from the book itself. This also, the chapters that we'll be reading will have access to electronically. And then the last major text that we're going to be looking at will take us actually to Mexico, as opposed to primarily in the US or in the Mexican-US borderlands, to look a little bit about the culture of medicine, the culture of health, in a book that's titled Becoming Gods, Medical Training in Mexican Hospitals. It's attentive as well to dynamics of gender as they manifest themselves into how doctors are trained in Mexico, specifically in Puebla. So those are going to be our readings for the quarter. Again, you'll be able to access electronic versions through the library of all of them, but I do strongly encourage you to acquire hard copies if that's the best way. Reading, with the book in your hand is the best way that you engage with texts, with reading. There's one more like required material, and this one is required and necessary for basically most course assignments and even in-course activities, and that's going to be getting a lined writer's notebook. Ideally 5 inches by 8¼ inches size. This is an example of a Moleskine, the classic ruled notebook. So you'll see this is what I use for a lot of my writing and journaling. I want everyone to acquire one of these. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but this is going to be the primary site of course assignments, is one of these notebooks. I give you some examples and links in the syllabus. This is like the Moleskine brand, which I typically use. You can get it on Amazon, from Target, other places online. A comparable, and then I give you some comparable options as well. Ideally, I'd recommend a ruled version. So again, all of the copies are available through the bookstore or through online retailers, and ebook versions are available through the library. Take a moment on your own time when you go through the syllabus to look at some of the course learning outcomes. So these are essentially, after successful completion of the course, these will be what a student will be able to do at the end. And then I just want to quickly go over a point in student hours. So this is a 5-unit course. So that corresponds, according to the System-Wide Senate Regulation 760, to 150 hours over the quarter, approximately on average about 15 hours of work per week. So the way that breaks down, that 15 weekly hours does of course include lecture. So I anticipate that to be successful in this course, you'll spend about 3¼ hours each week coming to class, attending and participating in lecture. You'll spend about 3 hours on homework assignments. So we'll go a little bit more into detail briefly, but that might be your journal reflections or some of the other assignments like book profiles or working on your final paper. And then in addition to those, to get to that sort of 15 hours a week, I also imagine that you spend about 8¾ or 8½ hours weekly on reading. So prepare to be reading about 30 to 50 pages per class session. And note that sometimes, even though it might not actually take all of that time to read, sometimes effective learning and reading comprehension requires reading it twice, or it requires taking notes and reviewing notes and looking words up and looking at the end notes of a book or going through the index or whatever that might be. Know that I'm specifically limiting the number of homework assignments in order for, of that sort of 15 hours per week that correspond to a 5-unit class, that you also feel like you have time and space to dedicate to reading the texts that we're all reading together, and taking your time with them, and sometimes reading them twice. So I'm quickly going to go over the key course requirements. So the first requirement assignment is a syllabus quiz. After you watch this recording, after you attend the first day of class when we'll go over the syllabus in person, you'll take this quiz on the course Canvas by Thursday, April 6th. It's 5 points. It's a really short quiz. You can consult the syllabus while you take it. It's untimed, and there's no trick questions, just as a way to reinforce. And so you know at the beginning of the quarter what to expect as the quarter progresses. Okay, our key every day-to-day like major assignment is going to be this journal, the response and reflection journal. Each week on the Friday before each week, I'm going to post to the course Canvas through the announcements function a set of 2 or more prompts. And these are going to be prompts that you're going to be used to respond to for the following week's class session. So for Tuesday's class session and for Thursday's class session, and this will be explained in the announcement, your responses for each of those days. So each week then, in addition to the assigned reading for Tuesday and the assigned reading for Thursday, you'll have a prompt and you'll have a question to respond and reflect and write about in your journal. So you'll have one for Tuesday and you'll have one for Thursday, but you'll receive both of those prompts the week before. On Friday, I'll send that announcement. The topics of those prompts will vary. Sometimes they'll just be asking you about the reading that was assigned that day. Sometimes they might be asking you to describe or reflect on a key quote from the reading. Or it might be asking you to draw on your own everyday experiences and do a little bit more of personal reflection. I expect that you will spend about 20 to 30 minutes on each of those reflections. And that translates to roughly 2 to 3, maybe even on to 4 pages of writing in this size of a journal. So that was my general expectation for each of those prompts. About 20 to 30 minutes or about 2, 3, 4 pages in a Moleskine or a comparable journal. Now, these aren't going to be evaluated based on whether they're right or wrong or responding to or not. That's not the purpose. The purpose is that we are thinking and engaging and reflecting on the readings and building up our analytical and interpretive capacities in order to be able to do the final assignment. And so you're not going to be like turning these in and I'm going to be like evaluating them and grading them as I might other assignments. Rather, what's gonna happen is that over the course of the quarter, there's gonna be 4 check-in dates. And these are just basically days where you'll bring your journal to class. I'll take a look at them. I'll look at if it looks like it's been that you've been spending about 20 to 30 minutes per class set per prompt, and seeing, your progress, and you'll earn up to 5 points for each of those 4 check-in dates based on the progress that you've made and what I can see in a brief assessment and evaluation of your journal. I want you to bring your journal to class every day. because sometimes we might have in-class writing activities, sometimes we might have discussions and be debating or discussing or thinking out loud with each other. And sometimes it's helpful to refer to the ideas that we've written ahead of time in our conversations. So bring it to class every day, but definitely bring it to class on these specific days when we're having the in-class check-in. I might also decide to do unannounced check-ins on your journals. If I do that, it would be for extra credit. And then it will just, be how much based on how much progress has been made since our last announced check-in. You have to be in class in order to earn credit at these check-ins. Again, as I write in the syllabus, and I'll reinforce this over the course of the quarter, but this is really just a space for you to workshop your ideas, your first reactions, your responses to the text that we're reading. Again, we're thinking about gender, health, and migration, and a lot of the stories that we're going to be reading they're not particularly light. They're stories of suffering, they're stories of violence, they're stories of traumas. And the books that we're reading take different approaches to really understanding how those traumas, how those experiences based on gender, how inequalities that arrive from the immigration system have these impacts on health. Those stories ask us to take time to process and understand and think and react. And so that's really what the journal is. It's giving us space to do that thinking and writing, and that then better prepares us to engage in enlightening and illuminating discussion in class. The journal, finally, is also kind of like a helpful starting point for your book profile assignment, the one that I'm going to talk about next. A lot of the times, the kinds of prompts that I'll be asking in your journal entries are going to be intended to be leading you to begin to develop text and ideas that then you'll then apply to the book profile assignment. It will also be helpful especially in those first half of the quarter, as we're going through Sarah Horton's They Leave Their Kidneys in the Field, in preparation for your midterm. Your midterm exam is going to be on Canvas, open book, open note. And so having notes already written, compiled in one place, specifically your journal, alongside the text itself, is going to be an effective tool for being successful on the midterm. So the journal is going to be, this is like the biggest component of the class, and this is the building block to the other assignments. So staying on top of the journal is the key to success in the class, because that's what's going to help you take on and approach the remaining assignments in the class. One of those is the book profile assignment. So you'll have 3 book profiles to turn in over the course of the quarter. One on the Horton book, one on Smith Oka, Becoming Gods, and then one on either the Farfan Santos text or the Emily Mendenhall text. We'll go over a little bit more the book profile assignment in class. Also note that there are sample book profiles. So students who have taken this class already, I've also uploaded some examples of what the book profiles look like. We'll go over that in class later as we get closer to when your first book profile is due. Midterm exam, that will be during the scheduled class period on Thursday, April 27th, but you will take the midterm exam on Canvas. So you won't come to class, you'll take it at home, in the library, in a computer lab, wherever it makes most sense for you to sit and focus on the exam. However, it's taken entirely on Canvas. It's open note, it's open book. You'll be able to access your journal entries up to that point, as well as the text. Again, the midterm is primarily going to be covering They Leave Their Kidneys in the Fields, the first book that we're reading in the class. And then besides the book profiles and the midterm exam, the only remaining assignment is your final paper, and it's an illness narrative. Again, we're going to be looking a little bit more, so I'm not going to go into this concept yet in this course overview, but it's just it's your final paper. All of the books that we read model this method of constructing an illness narrative. So over the course of the quarter, you're going to be exposed to ways of writing about illness, of writing about health from a narrative perspective through the course readings. And then you're going to be showing your comprehension of that by writing and conducting your own illness narrative. Ideally, the types of writing exercises and prompts that we'll also be doing over the quarter are intended to prepare you to be able to write your own illness narrative. So that will be your final paper, about 1,300 words, and it will be due on Thursday, June 15th by 11:59 on Canvas. So here's the course breakdown, course grade breakdown. The syllabus quiz is 5 points. The 4 journal check-ins are each of those 4 journal check-ins are 5 points. So over the course of the quarter, that's 20 points. You'll have 3 book profiles. Each of those book profiles are 10 points. So the book profiles constitute 30 points. The midterm exam is 20 points. And then the final paper is 25 points in total. 5 points are a proposal, a short 2 to 3 page proposal, expressing your initial ideas and plans for your final paper, and then 20 points for the final paper. And that brings us to 100. I encourage you to spend some time going through the course policies in the syllabus. Specifically, look at this first one. Again, we're examining texts, images, videos that are going to be containing descriptions of and scenes depicting traumatic experiences, including sexual and gender-based violence. So I will do my best to provide individual content warnings for specific course materials on the Canvas announcement. So I might say on page 23, there's discussions of sexual and gender-based violence. So it's imperative to be paying attention and reading those announcements in general, because that's also where you'll be getting the prompts for the journal entry assignments. But just know that all of the texts, to one degree or another, are going to be touching on sexual and gender-based violence. There's really no way around it for a course on gender, health, and migration because of the pervasiveness in people's experiences and because of the impact that this kind of violence has on overall health. Again, do consult the course policies. Also note that deadlines are final unless you have DRC, unless you're DRC related accommodations. And in that case, extensions for certain assignments will be granted on a case-by-case basis. I also I give you feedback on your assignments and your writing through Canvas. So note that for your book profiles, for the illness narrative, so for these big types of assignments that you're submitting in class, every assignment has a rubric on Canvas. That rubric is really broken down specifically into different point values, and your grade, you'll earn points based on the rubric itself. So consult that rubric for feedback and how to improve, particularly in the book profile assignments. This page is really just kind of the most basic summary of what happens each week. So just note like this is just a really quick shorthand table. It has the week number, it has all of the reading that we have to do that week, and then what you might have to do or submit that particular week in the form of deliverables. This is helpful for kind of your like long-term planning, but it doesn't break down between Tuesdays and Thursdays what's expected. So the best way, again, for understanding and knowing and being prepared for what's going to happen Tuesday, what's going to happen Thursday in class, is to go to the detailed weekly course schedule and to be attentive to the weekly announcements on Canvas. So you'll see if you go to the final section of the syllabus, which is this detailed weekly course schedule, the class is broken down into 3 parts. We'll talk about those 3 different parts during class, but I tried to make it so that you know print this out and you can check off as like a kind of checklist that you're doing, you know, the assigned assignments and readings and aware of what's going to happen for specific days during class. And this is like a good way to do it in addition to having that on Canvas. I personally work through lists and checking things off lists. So this is really designed to be helpful if you are kind of like a list and checking off person. So you'll see, you know, what is expected for each day kind of before class in terms of what to read, that a reminder that you have a journal reflection to do, to consult Canvas for the specific prompt for that journal reflection, and then anything else. And some days I also indicate what might be happening if it's pertinent during scheduled class period. So for example, on Thursday, April 6th, I'm actually giving a research presentation. So we'll be doing at UC Irvine. So we'll be doing an asynchronous remote class session. There's a recorded lecture already on Canvas, and you'll be, instead of coming to class that day, you'll be watching that recorded lecture on your own time or at home, preferably during the scheduled class period, in addition to doing the reading and the journal reflection. So you'll see that that trend kind of continues each week, kind of what the reading is and what assignments might be coming up. Again, by Thursday, April 20th, that's when your first book profile is due. So you'll want to submit that on Canvas before the start of class. And that will continue on through the rest of the quarter. So this is always a good thing to look at as you are sort of preparing each week and trying to figure out what you need to read by each class day and know what other assignments might be coming down the line. Really, your day-to-day, though, for LALS 175 and for being successful in LALS 175 is based on keeping up with our assigned readings and keeping up with the journal reflections. Beyond that, that's probably what's going to be your you know, the primary assignments, the primary thing that you're going to be spending your time doing. And then a couple of times over the quarter, you'll submit a book profile 3 times. You'll be preparing for the midterm exam, and then you'll have that final paper. So the last thing that I just wanted to go over in this course introduction is just to show you the best way to access the readings. So we're gonna go switch over to the browser. So one of the things that you'll see is that I don't actually download every book chapter and sort of upload the file, and I will explain why. So part of what's important for me as the instructor is that if you don't actually want to spend the money on buying the texts, though that is kind of ideal, I think. I think it's really good to have copies of the text. But if you prefer online versions, it's possible to just do this class with ebooks. And we are lucky to have a library that is willing to pay for the electronic licenses of these books, so that you don't actually have to buy the ebook if you don't want to. However, part of convincing the library to buy licenses, university-wide licenses for different books, is based on use. And so in order to keep the library, to keep paying for the license for different texts, we have to kind of like click and download and show that these texts are being used. So I want you all to be able to, if you are using the library electronic versions of these books, to go and actually download them yourself, because we want to show to the library, please keep buying these licenses, because when they do their own analysis and they see, what books are getting downloaded, what are students actually using, it shows, instead of just me downloading it once and sending it to everyone, that kind of shows, okay, this many students in the class are actually downloading and using these licenses. So basically, all you do is just make sure that you go to the UC-SC library webpage. If you are on campus, it's typically the easiest, but if you're off campus and you're having difficulties, you might just need to log in through the VPN. And then basically any of the books that we're reading, like Becoming Gods by Vanya Smith Oka, you just type it in the search and you'll see it will come up and say available online. So you'll click on the entry and you'll see this view online full text availability. Click on that, and then you'll be able to download through the university license the different chapters that we're reading, and then just pay attention to the syllabus and Canvas for knowing which sections of the book we're reading on which days. So this is going to be the same more or less for all of our texts. So for example, for They Leave Their Kidneys in the Fields, there's different options. Again, you can go to this. We have 3 different options, but all under View Online. You'll click on it and you'll be able to download PDFs of each of the chapters. So that's how you'll access the readings. Some of the readings I will be linking and uploading to Canvas, but very few. Most of the time, what you'll need to do is either make sure that you've acquired the book, the hard copy version of the book, or you're going through the library and downloading the chapters on your own time. If you have any questions about that, let me know, and we'll also go through this in class as well. And then just finally, a note on the course Canvas. More or less, most of the class is up. I've broken it down into modules, so you'll see every assignment is already there. The book profiles 1, 2, and 3, the illness narrative proposal, the illness narrative. If you click on the files page, you'll see sample assignments. So you'll even see some examples of book profiles from prior iterations of this course, even an example of a student's illness narrative. The announcements function is where you'll see the prompts that I'll be listing out for each week. And then, of course, it will be up to you to respond and write in your journal. Most assignments are submitted through Canvas, the book profiles, the final paper. Again, your midterm you do on Canvas. The book profile, the journal entries is on Canvas. It's on paper. And again, you'll be bringing your journal to class. So if that's confusing still, let me know. In class, we'll continue to have conversations and reminders about how course assignments are working. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to the class and embarking on the next 10 weeks with you all.